quorum is met, I think. Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats. It's okay. Quorum is met. Yeah, okay. Let me start by thanking once again Turkey and Colombia for taking up the chairmanship on my behalf during the examination of the important items of yesterday. Let me first inform you that the Bureau met this morning for the last time and discussed several issues. Despite our hard work of yesterday evening, we are still very much behind schedule and have a total of 12 elements to examine if we follow our original agenda. As you know, if we do not examine certain crucial items today, the committee will not be able to function next year. The timetable has been revised in this regard and distributed to all committee members. At this point, we are obliged to examine the following agenda items. 18, establishment of the evaluation body for the 2018 cycle. 19, date and venue of the 13th session of the committee. 20, election of the members of the Bureau of the 13th session of the committee. 17, accreditation of new non-governmental organizations and the review of accredited non-governmental organizations. 5A, report by the committee to the General Assembly on its activities, January 2016 to December 2017. 22, adoption of the list of decisions. If we run out of time, the remaining items 13, 12, 15, 16, and 21 will unfortunately not be examined at this session. Mr. Tim Curtis, could you please kindly explain how we will proceed today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. As mentioned, if everything goes as planned, we will finish the morning session with items 18, 19, 20, up to item 17, the accreditation of new NGOs and review of accredited non-governmental organizations. Then, of course, will be the lunch break, during which the Secretariat will prepare the revised version of the report of the committee to the General Assembly on its activities, which is the item 5A, as well as the list of all decisions adopted until that point, item 22. The committee members will find a printed copy of these documents upon their return in the room at 2 p.m. and have half an hour to read them. I would then propose that we start the afternoon session at 2:30 p.m. to adopt 5A, report by the committee to the General Assembly on its activities, covering the period January 2016 to December 2017, and the adoption of the list of decisions. We may also ask the committee to allow the rapporteur of the 12th session of the committee to validate any remaining decisions that may be taken after that. After that, and before the closing the 12th session of the committee, we will try to examine the last remaining items in the following order. 13, report of the informal ad hoc working group. 12, procedures to facilitate dialogue between the evaluation body and the submitting states. 15, intangible cultural heritage in emergencies. 16, follow-up to the recommendations of the external auditor's report on the governance of UNESCO and dependent funds, programs, and entities. And 21, other business. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We now understand the very long road ahead of us today. Let us promptly move on to item 18, establishment of the evaluation body for the 2018 cycle. We will move on now to item 18, establishment of the evaluation body for the 2018 cycle. Mr. Secretary, Madam Secretary, the floor is yours to present this item to us.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le comité invité a fait 3 choses. Adopter les termes de référence de l'organe d'évaluation que vous pouvez trouver à l'annexe 1 du document 18. Vous êtes également invité à nommer 2 ONG en experts. Cette fois-ci, un siège pour l'ONG est vacant pour le groupe électoral 3. La situation est même pour le groupe électoral 4. Et un siège pour l'expert est vacant pour le groupe électoral 5B. Le comité est aussi invité à renommer les 9 membres élus les années précédentes. Des candidats ont été proposés par des États partis par l'intermédiaire du président de chaque groupe électoral. Selon la décision 9/11, les États sont encouragés à veiller à ce qu'au moins 2 candidatures soient envoyées par le président du groupe électoral et conformément au paragraphe 28 des directives opérationnelles, 3 candidats maximum peuvent être proposés. En ce qui concerne les candidatures reçues par groupe électoral, nous avons une ONG pour le groupe 3. Pour ce groupe, le nombre de candidats correspond au nombre de sièges à pourvoir, c'est-à-dire que l'ONG Éliguée Fondation sera déclarée élue sans vote. Nous avons 3 ONG pour le groupe 4 et pour le groupe 5B, 2 experts ont candidaté. Je tiens à attirer votre attention au fait que la candidature de l'experte égyptienne a été retirée sur demande de l'Égypte. Et finalement, vous pouvez trouver à l'annexe 2 du document 18 la liste des candidats, les sites intranet, les demandes d'accréditation des ONG et les CV des experts. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Je vous remercie beaucoup, Madame Fumiko. Dear members of the committee, I propose that we proceed in the order in which the Secretary introduced our work, by looking first at the terms of reference and then proceeding to the appointment of the 3 new members of the evaluation body. I'd like to remind you that we adopted in 2015 amendments to our rules of procedure to include provisions governing voting by secret ballot, notably to Rule 39. With reference to Section B of Rule 39, we will therefore proceed with a vote by secret ballot to choose the 2 of the 3 new members of the evaluation body. May I suggest that we first proceed to adopt the terms of reference as shown on the screen. I'm wondering, Heather, are there any amendments or questions? So we will proceed para by para. Para 1. No amendment, no objections. Adopted. Para 2. I think no objection. Adopted. Para 3, private meetings, adopted. Para 4, seeing no objection, para 4A, B, C, D, and E is a recommendation to the committee. Inscribe, select, approve. So can I take it that our committee members decide to adopt para 4 as a whole? Seeing no objections, para 4 as a whole adopted. Para 5 shall provide the committee with an overview of all files and the report of its evaluation. I think there will be no comment, no objections. Para 5 adopted. Para 6 I see no objections. Para 6 adopted. So can I take it that our committee members have decided to adopt the Annex 1 as a whole in its original form without any proposed amendments? Is so decided. So we just adopt the terms of reference in their entirety. So, Madam Secretary, can you now explain to us the procedure of voting by secret ballot?
Avec plaisir, Monsieur le Président. Le secrétariat va distribuer à tous les membres du comité 2 bulletins, un pour chaque siège vacant et une enveloppe. Chaque membre du comité doit faire un choix pour chacun des 2 sièges vacants et non pas uniquement pour le siège vacant de son groupe électoral. Le candidat ayant reçu le plus grand nombre de votes sera élu. Sur chaque bulletin, les noms de tous les candidats pour chaque siège sont inscrits. Sur le barcode, please. Vous êtes invité à entrer les noms des candidats pour lesquels vous souhaitez voter. Et je demande à mes collègues, oui, merci beaucoup, tel qu'indiqué sur les écrans. Merci de plier les bulletins, les mettre dans l'enveloppe qui vous a été remise et la sceller. S'il vous plaît, n'écrivez rien sur l'enveloppe. L'absence de bulletin dans l'enveloppe est considérée comme une abstention. Les bulletins sur lesquels plus de noms que des sièges vacants ont été enterrés sont considérés nuls. Les bulletins qui ne contiennent aucune indication quant à l'intention du votant sont également considérés comme nuls. Après une pause de 5 minutes, nous allons procéder à un appel nominal des membres du comité pour qu'ils puissent déposer leur enveloppe dans l'urne qui est prêt pour vous juste devant le podium. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Are there any questions about this process? No. Have you chosen our tellers? Not yet? To start, we need 2 volunteers who are willing to assume the role of tellers for the elections. Are there any volunteers among the members of the committee? Okay, Cote d'Ivoire. Okay, thank you, India. So Cote d'Ivoire and India, thank you so much for your cooperation. Thank you. Can I invite the distinguished representative of Cote d'Ivoire and India to join us on the podium?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Could you just cut the mic?
Please, your distinguished representative of India, if you come over to the podium, I see none of your colleagues will take a seat. How shall we do? No problem? Okay, there will be no problem. So
We cannot.
Secretary recommended me that it's not possible. So would you please look for somebody else to take a seat? If that's the case, we'd better look for another teller.
Austria is volunteering.
Austria. How about Austria? Austria?
Yes, Ms. Detschmann is coming.
Okay, thank you so much. So the committee has chosen distinguished representative from Cote d'Ivoire and Austria as tellers. And did all members of the committee receive their ballots and envelopes? I hope so. Very well. You have 5 minutes to circle the names of the candidates for whom you wish to vote before the call to deposit the ballots. You have 5 minutes. And during the bureau meeting, I waiting for our committee members to circle to finish the ballot. This morning's bureau meeting, the Indian delegation kindly requested to screen the video in relation to the inscription of yesterday. Now, India, are you ready to show the video? Okay.
O Mother Ganga, those who bathe in your waters do not have to take birth again. You are held in the highest esteem. You destroy your devotees' sins and save them from hell.
Om Devi Sureshwari Bhagavati Gange Tribhuvana Kamale Bhagirathi Sukhadayini Matah Tava Jala Mahima Nigame Khyatah.
Kumbh Mela, the festival of the sacred pitcher, is the world's largest peaceful congregation of pilgrims, where people bathe and take a dip in a sacred river. It is held every third year at one of the 4 places by rotation: Haridwar, Allahabad, Nasik and Ujjain. The Ardha Kumbha or the half Kumbha is held.
Thank you so much, and once again, congratulations to India for its inscription of Indian nomination file. I think our committee members have finished, even though I gave 3 minutes, so just to save time, if everything is ready, I invite Madame Fumiko to conduct the roll call so as to collect the ballot of each delegation. The call will be in the French alphabetical order of member states of the committee. To save time, you can approach the podium in advance. To help in doing so, you will have the list on the screens with the state code and the ones immediately following it. Madam Secretary.
Merci beaucoup. L'Afghanistan. À voter. L'Algérie. L'Arménie. À voter. L'Autriche. À voter. La Bulgarie. À voter. Chypre. Chypre. À voter. La Colombie. À voter. Le Congo. A voté la Côte d'Ivoire. A voté Cuba. L'Éthiopie. A voté le Guatemala. A voté la Hongrie. A voté l'Inde. A voté le Liban. A voté Maurice. A voté la Mongolie. A voté la Palestine. A voté les Philippines. A voté la République de Corée. A voté Santa Lucie. A voté le Sénégal. A voté la Turquie. A voté la Zambie. A voté, et j'appelle pour la deuxième fois les deux pays qui n'ont pas encore voté. L'Algérie. A voté. Je crois que nous avons terminé, Monsieur le Président. Merci. Ah, pardon, je n'ai pas encore appelé le deuxième pays. Cuba. Et absent. Merci, le Président.
So we have collected all the envelopes. While the votes are being counted, let us proceed with item 19. We now have to decide on the date and the venue of the 13th session of the committee next year in 2018. Please refer to document 19 and its corresponding draft decision for your reference. I have been informed that the Secretariat received a proposal from Mauritius to host the next session. Perhaps the delegation from Mauritius would like to extend that invitation directly to the committee. Mauritius, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, it is a great honor and pleasure for Mauritius to formally invite all our members for the 13th session next year in Mauritius. For us, it is a moment of gratitude and honor to be able to host this very important event in Mauritius, and also give the opportunity to all our friends around the world to share our culture and thus enlarge our horizon. I believe that meeting outside Paris is very important for all of us so that we can know, share, appreciate, and participate in the lives of people around us, because this is all the point in terms of culture. Sharing, experiencing by oneself is very important. It shall be the first time that Mauritius will be hosting this conference, though I must say that we have got some experience in terms of hosting events like conferences and other major activities. Mauritius is the second country after Algeria to have ratified the 2003 convention, and I'm sure that all our friends here will find an enriching and memorable experience in Mauritius. And therefore, I invite each and every one to visit or to revisit Mauritius. Just to give you, sorry, Chair, I've not started as such. If I could be given some more time, with your kind permission. And just to tell you that we are fully bilingual. We speak French and English, and at times even a third language. Like myself, I speak Hindi. I can manage some Germany, and others speak some Mandarin, some Arabic, which means that each and every one will feel very at ease. It's a small island just like Jeju, 2,200 kilometers square, with a population of 1.3 million. It's a high-end tourist destination. And just to tell you that it appears within the 10 countries according to the best travel of 2018 for next year, which means that you will be able to see Mauritius within this particular context. We are as green as Jeju, and according to WHO, the quality of the air is second after Estonia. And it appears to be one of the 10 countries free from conflict. And contrary to Jeju, we will be in summer, and there's no need for coats and gloves. Just what you have to bring is your swimming suit and your suntan cream. The temperature will be about 25 to 30 degrees. You will have the opportunity of tasting our mangoes, our lychees, and our pineapple, which will be the season fruit at the time. And just to tell you that with UNESCO, we have been collaborating quite a lot. And in fact, this year itself, we have had 3 conferences by experts, one on slavery, the second one on indentured laborer, and the third one regarding synergies in terms of culture. Last week, we also had the opportunity of launching worldwide a handbook by UNESCO regarding management of heritage sites. We do have 2 World Heritage Sites, one for slavery and the other one for indentured laborers. And we will be meeting, hopefully, in Port Louis, which is 5 minutes from the capital city. And we've got within the venue, within 15 minutes, quite a few business hotels. And we are 40 minutes from resort hotels, where I'm sure that my friends will be very well taken care of. Mauritius is a multicultural country where we've got the main religion, we've got Indians, we've got people from African descent, we've got also Chinese origin, Arabic, and European also. Just to tell you that you are most welcome. If I may crave some indulgence, Chair, let me speak a few words in French for my French-speaking countries, Chers amis, c'est avec une grande joie qu'on va vous accueillir à l'île Maurice. Comme vous savez, l'île Maurice est une île dans l'océan Indien et c'est une destination touristique très connue. Et d'après le Best Travel de 2018, c'est un des 10 pays qu'on devait visiter en 2018. Et ça, naturellement, c'est quelque chose que je suis sûr que vous allez pouvoir apprécier. Ça va être en été et vous aurez l'occasion quand même de pouvoir jouer à des différentes facilités touristiques que nous avons en termes d'hôtels, en termes de temps, qui va être en plein été. Et ça va être entre 25 et 30 degrés. Nous sommes aussi de 6 heures vol de Dubaï, 4 heures du Sud-Afrique, 6 heures de Singapour, 5 heures de l'Inde et 12 heures d'Europe, juste pour vous donner une idée en ce qui concerne la distance. Et comme vous savez aussi, nous étions le 2e pays à avoir ratifié la Convention en 2004 après l'Algérie. Et juste pour vous donner une idée sommaire de ce que vous attend. Alors, pour moi, c'est un plaisir de vous dire de visiter ou bien de revisiter l'île Maurice l'année prochaine pour la conférence. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. And without Your Excellency's kind explanation, I think that everybody in this hall fully agrees with you that Mauritius is a paradise country and also, therefore, ideal place, ideal venue for ICH, our committee session next year. Dear members, Mauritius has proposed to host the 13th session, and I suggest that we accept its kind offer once again by acclamation. I'd like to take this excellent opportunity to thank Mauritius once again. We are very pleased about this offer. Now we have to decide on the dates. I invite the Secretary to provide some additional information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Rule 4.1 of the Rules of Procedure stipulates that the committee shall determine at each session in consultation with the Director General the date and place of the next session. The Secretariat has managed to confirm with the Director General and the authorities of Mauritius that the 13th session can be held from 26 November to the 1st December 2018. The Secretariat has amended the draft decision accordingly, and the team is displaying it now on the screens, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Fumiko. This seems to be very clear. Can we agree on this? Thank you. Now please refer to document 19 and this draft decision. Okay, Mauritius.
Chair, may I suggest that we add before Mauritius, Republic of Mauritius, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? The draft decision, one is the Republic of Mauritius to host its 13th session. Para 2, Port Louis, Republic of Mauritius, from 26th November to 1st of December 2018. No more comments. So may I ask the committee to adopt draft decision 12.com/19 as shown on the screen? Seeing no objections, I therefore declare decision 12.com/19 adopted as it is. Congratulations once again, the Republic of Mauritius. We are looking forward to the 13th session of the committee. The video will be played. Now that we have discussed the date and the venue of the 13th session of the committee in 2018, we have to elect the next bureau. Please refer to document 20. Allow me to recall that in accordance with the rules 12 and 13 of the Rules of Procedure, the committee shall elect its bureau consisting of a chairperson, one or more vice chairpersons, and the rapporteur who shall remain in office until the end of the next ordinary session. In accordance with Rule 13.4, the committee, in electing the bureau, shall have due regard to the need to ensure equitable geographical representation and, in as much as possible, a balance among the various fields of intangible cultural heritage. The members of the bureau also need to be members of the committee. The role of the rapporteur is to validate the decisions that the committee and its bureau take after they have been prepared by the Secretariat. According to the Office of International Standards and Legal Affairs, the rapporteur should not express his or her opinion nor vote in his capacity or her capacity as rapporteur during bureau meetings if all electoral groups are already represented through the chairperson and the vice chairs in order to respect the principle of equitable geographical representation within the bureau pursuant to Rule 12.1 of the Rules of Procedure. It is customary that the chairperson of the bureau shall be from the host country, and therefore Republic of Mauritius will be the bureau member for Group 5A. The Republic of Mauritius is asking the indulgence of the committee to suspend part of Rule 13.1 to give them time until January next year to choose the chairperson. I am sure that you will agree with me that we can accord the Republic of Mauritius this additional time, given their generous offer to host the committee next year. The Republic of Mauritius will communicate the name of the chairperson they wish to propose to the Secretariat. The Secretariat will share with all committee members this information electronically and allow us 15 days to reply in case you have any objections. May I ask the members of the committee if they agree to suspend part of Rule 13.1 to respond positively to the request from the Republic of Mauritius and to the procedure I just described? Thank you, dear colleagues. May I invite the members of the committee to make a proposal concerning the rapporteur? Saint Lucia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish to nominate Gabriel Deschmann from Austria for rapporteur of the committee.
Thank you, Saint Lucia. Now, Palestine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank our colleague from Santa Lucia, and I warmly support his proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Palestine. Colombia, followed by Turkey. Colombia first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We would also like to support Austria. Thank you.
Thank you, Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We would also like to warmly support Austria. Thank you.
Hungary, Zambia, Afghanistan, and Bulgaria. Yeah. and Congo. Okay, yeah, Hungary, Zambia, Congo, Bulgaria, Senegal, Ethiopia, Cote d'Ivoire, Armenia. Yeah, it seems to me that the proposal of Austria as a new rapporteur is, I think, almost with unanimously with the consensus. So can I take it that it's all welcoming and supportive statement by, so if that's the case, I'd like to stop here and all the supportive statement will be duly recorded. Thank you again. Can we now have proposal for the vice chairpersons? Still, we need some more time. Austria.
We would like to propose a Cyprus for election group 1 as a bureau member and vice chair.
Thank you, Austria. I recognize Mongolia. Before giving the floor to Mongolia, for Group 1, just ago, it's proposed by Austria as Cyprus as a vice chair for Group 1. And Group 2, I think it's a clean slate. And we need finalization from electoral Group 3 and Group 4. And 5A is the Republic of Mauritius. It's a host country, so it's not necessary. So Group 5B, we have to decide. Group 3, Group 4, Group 5B. Now, Mongolia, you have the floor.
Mongolia would like to propose Philippines from Group 4.
Thank you. And Colombia.
For the group number 3, we would like to propose Guatemala.
Guatemala, okay. Thank you. Now, Palestine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our delegation, in the name of the Group 5B, would like to propose Lebanon as vice chair for the next session. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. Can we adopt the whole decision as seen on the screen already duly reflected? Elect Ms. Gabriele Deschmann from Austria as a rapporteur and elect Cyprus, Armenia, Guatemala, Philippines, Lebanon as vice chairpersons of the committee. Seeing no objections, I therefore declare decision 12.com/20 adopted as proposed. Yes, adopted. The results again, part 2. Dear colleagues, before we continue with the next item, I am pleased to announce that the counting of ballots concerning the new members of the evaluation body has been completed. 24 or 23? Yeah, we are not ready? Okay.
So we will do item 17 and then come back to this.
Okay, item 18 is not ready for counting, so we will proceed to item 17 first. We move on now to item 17, concerning accreditation of new non-governmental organizations and the review of accredited non-governmental organizations. Mr. Secretary, the floor is yours to present this item to committee members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. You will note from the document this time that it is divided into 3 parts. The first relates to the accreditation of new non-governmental organizations. The second relates to the review of accredited non-governmental organizations, and the third is some observations on the participation of accredited non-government organizations. For the interest of time, please allow me not to go into details of the document. I would only highlight some observations concerning the participation of accredited NGOs under the Convention. Firstly, as you will see in the document, there seems to be a need to elaborate the inter alia advisory functions of NGOs, as the majority of NGOs have not in reality been concretely involved in the work of the committee, since only 6 NGOs can be engaged in the evaluation body at any given time. And to address this challenge, the committee may wish to elaborate on what these inter alia functions mean and what it requires from non-governmental organizations in order to maximize the benefit of partnerships with accredited non-governmental organization. Secondly, we note that there are some inconsistencies in the criteria for accreditation and those for review of accreditation. The accreditation requests are mostly evaluated against information related to the administrative and legal status of the organizations, together with a description of their activities. Meanwhile, renewals are determined by the contribution of NGOs to the statutory activities of the committee and their activities at the bilateral, sub-regional, regional, or international levels. To ensure coherence in the process, the committee, again, for this reason, may wish to revise the criteria of accreditation in view of these inter alia functions it requires from the NGOs in paragraph 19. The document also draws your attention to the ICH NGO Forum, a consortium of accredited NGOs, which seems to be developing considerably. It could be encouraged to play a more active role should the committee clarify these inter alia functions. It might wish to give it. Also, please note that the problem of geographical imbalance persists, and it sometimes becomes challenging to identify an adequate number of NGO candidates from certain electoral groups for the evaluation body. It is important to explore practical methods to redress the disparity in geographical distribution. Following these observations, it is becoming clear the committee would need first to reflect on inter alia advisory functions, and then also the committee may wish to deliberate on moving towards a system that is flexible enough to allow committee to benefit more from the diverse sets of expertise and services of NGOs. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Tim Curtis. I now open the floor. Does anybody wish to take the floor? I recognize the distinguished permanent delegate of Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We agree that the network of accredited NGOs should be more balanced in terms of equitable geographic representation. We also think that possibilities to maximize our engagement with the NGO network be explored. We hope that the committee can reflect on appropriate measures on this for future sessions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We thank the Secretariat for their efforts, for the accreditation requests and the analytic report reflecting on the current distribution and function of NGOs. We observe that the majority of accredited NGOs are in Group 1. Likewise, the majority of the 29 NGOs whose accreditation is maintained are in Group 1. We hope that the geographical representation of NGOs would become more balanced in the future. Through enhancing the visibility of convention, and NGOs are further promoted through capacity building and international assistance. We also observe that the majority of accredited NGOs are not able to observe the meetings of the committee. The role of Secretariat as the facilitator for NGOs could be highlighted in this regard. Following the decisions of the governing bodies, the number of accredited NGOs would be 179. The collaborations between NGOs and the work done via ICH NGO forums in parallel with the committee's deliberations are quite important. On the other hand, pertaining to Article 9 of the Convention and the paragraphs 27 and 28 and 91 to 99 of the operational directives. The direct participation of NGOs as advisors is possible if their representatives are elected for 4 years to the 6 seats allocated to the NGOs in the evaluation body. This rather limited mandate is, in our view, not enough for the motivation and active contribution of NGOs to the committee. We believe new ways and methods should be developed for NGOs to participate more effectively in the committee's work. For example, requests under 100,000 for international assistance and periodical reports are being reviewed by the Bureau. We also take into consideration our Bureau experience that it will be useful to decide on these files following the simultaneous and separate advisory reports of the 3 NGOs would provide for the NGOs to participate in the committee's work while also reducing the workload of the Bureau. For this reason, we think that there's a need for new regulations on accreditation of NGOs and their participation in the work of committee. For this, we consider that it will be useful to address this topic in an informal and open-ended working group within the scope of Article 8 of the Convention. As Turkish delegation, we support the accreditation of 29 NGOs in line with the proposal of the Secretariat, are looking forward to their effective participation in the work of the committee after the approval of the General Assembly of the state parties in 2018. We also welcome that 3 of these 29 NGOs are from Turkey with regards to the increasing interests of non-governmental organizations in our country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Turkey and Palestine. And followed by Austria, Palestine first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very quickly, I would like first to thank our colleagues from Philippine delegation and from the Turkish delegation regarding the balance for the accredited NGOs. I really support what has been said, and we look forward to see the balance regarding the accredited NGOs for this convention. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Palestine. Now, Austria.
Thank you. We would also like to confirm that we are not happy with the imbalance, the geographical imbalance of NGOs, and welcome all steps that would kind of find a solution to that. Maybe one word to the ICH NGO Forum. We think this is excellent, and we congratulate the NGOs that have organized the NGO Forum this time so excellently, and we would encourage them to continue their work. And as to the committee, I think we would kind of welcome if we could give them a more active role also for the committee to have the ICH NGO Forum also more involved in specific roles here with our work. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Austria. I now give the floor to Senegal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je ne reviens pas sur les déclarations qui m'ont précédé, sur l'équilibre. Je voulais simplement rebondir sur comment essayer de maximiser l'apport des ONG au niveau du comité, à travers le forum et à travers également l'appui conseil. Mais au-delà du comité, moi je m'intéresse beaucoup plus à la participation effective des ONG au niveau des États parties. Je pense que c'est important parce que les ONG peuvent jouer un rôle, et elles jouent déjà un rôle extrêmement important sur le terrain. Et donc, c'est un devoir des États parties de les associer à toutes les activités de mise en œuvre de la Convention. Mais, d'un autre côté, il y a quand même que ces ONG, quelquefois, ne sont pas du tout connues par les États parties. Il y a des ONG qui existent, qui ne sont pas du tout connues. Moi, j'en ai vu au Sénégal, nous travaillons avec beaucoup d'ONG, mais d'autres sont totalement méconnues et je ne vois pas comment également on peut les accréditer si ces ONG ne travaillent pas directement avec les États. Un, c'est le devoir des États de les convier. Deux, c'est également une obligation aux des ONG vraiment de se rapprocher également, de travailler sur le terrain pour qu'elles soient visibles et connues par les États. Je vous remercie.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. We heard from various committee members stressing the need for a little fairer, more equitable geographical representation, and also the other very excellent and relevant observations and suggestions. So I think from committee members, we have completed our discussions. So I now give the floor to our observer members. I recognize Belgium.
Thank you very much. As it is the first time the Belgian delegation takes the floor, we would first like to thank and congratulate our Korean host for the excellent organization of the 12th session of the Intergovernmental Committee. We very warmly welcome the reflection about the inter alia functions of the NGOs, and in that regard we would like to recall decision 10 COM 15A 9 and 10 in Windhoek about ethics. In decision 9, the Secretariat is requested to develop an online platform with a toolkit based on the 12 ethical principles, and in point 10 the committee invited, and we quote, accredited NGOs to participate in enriching, sharing information, following up and contributing to update the online platform with tools of ethics for safeguarding intangible cultural heritage. So decision 10 COM 15A 9 and 10 gives a very concrete example of inter alia functions that can still be activated. Thank you very much.
I think we have heard from committee members and observer members. Now I'd like to open the floor for non-governmental organizations. If there are any NGOs wishing to take floors, please raise your hands. Yes, you have the floor. And before taking floor, identify your NGOs.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Diego Gradis de Tradition pour Demain pour le Forum des ONG. Je souhaiterais apporter quelques remarques finales de la part du Forum des ONG à l'issue de cette semaine, sans omettre, bien sûr, encore une fois, de remercier la Corée pour son accueil. Je ne reviendrai pas sur la question de l'organe d'évaluation que nous avons traité hier lors de notre intervention sur le point 12. Le Forum accueillera favorablement les possibilités de préciser la dimension inter alia de ces fonctions consultatives au comité au-delà de l'organe d'évaluation, et ça a été indirectement déjà mentionné par certains membres du comité à l'instant. La création à cet effet d'un groupe de travail serait la bienvenue avec notre participation, les ONG, si vous le souhaitez. Nous avons, par exemple, démontré la contribution que nous pouvons apporter dans la définition du cadre global de résultats lors du groupe de travail de Chengdu en juin. Parlant de groupe, le Forum a bien avancé dans son travail de régionalisation, tant dans la composition de son comité de pilotage que par la construction de réseaux dans les régions afin de catalyser les ONG et leurs efforts pour le PCI. On retrouve aussi, au niveau des différents groupes de travail que nous avons déjà évoqués lundi dans notre intervention, cette régionalisation, donc je n'y reviendrai pas. Enfin, nous remercions une fois encore l'Indonésie, la Korea Heritage Foundation pour leur soutien, pour l'atelier de renforcement de capacité de la semaine dernière, et ISHCAP pour son soutien permanent et encore récemment pour la publication de Heritage Alive sur la médecine traditionnelle. Merci au secrétariat pour avoir exprimé le défi pour le Forum que représente recevoir encore plus de soutien pour accomplir sa mission, pour renforcer la Convention, comme nous espérons avoir pu le faire ici à Jeju. Merci à l'Autriche, à la Turquie, à la Palestine, au Sénégal, à la Belgique pour leurs interventions. Enfin, le Forum se réjouit de participer à l'Assemblée en juin et à la prochaine session du comité à Maurice, et ainsi poursuivre sa collaboration avec les organes de la Convention pour la sauvegarde du PCI et pour les ONG, sa collaboration sur le terrain avec les communautés. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, and I recognize another NGO, so please identify your NGO before taking floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the China Folklore Society, an accredited NGO and incumbent member of the evaluation body, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Republic of Korea for its excellent hospitality and wonderful organization for the 12th session of the committee. We'd like to express our deepest gratitude to the committee for reviewing the periodical report by China Folklore Society. Our sincere thanks also go to the Secretariat for its continuous support and efficient assistance all the way through. We also want to thank other NGOs, experts, members of the evaluation body for your help and inspiration during the working process we share. China Folklore Society values the opportunity to serve the committee as one of the first members of the evaluation body during the past 3 years, from which CFS has benefited greatly and learned working methodologies, good practice of state parties, and information sharing experiences generated from the 4 mechanisms of international cooperation. As a result, our overall understanding of the goals and principles of the Convention and capacity has been enhanced. Also, as an outgoing member, we feel relieved and confident for what we have done during our term. Nevertheless, we also share our top concern with all involved actors, and the expertise and independency of the evaluation body should be fully respected. We welcome all the new members of the e-body and look forward to a more efficient e-body to better fulfill its duty for the committee. CFS would continue to devote itself to further promoting the safeguarding of ICH at local, national, regional, and international levels. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, the NGO from China. And any other NGOs wishing to take the floor? I see none. Now, let us move to the decision. Please refer to document ITH/17/12.com/17 and this draft decision in para 24. Can we see it on screens? May I ask the committee to adopt draft decision 12.com/17 as shown on the screens? Let us proceed, para by para. Para 1, citing the document we have examined. I see no objections. Para 1, adopted. Para 2, recalling the relevant paras from Convention and OD. I see no objections, adopted. Para 3, recalling the previous decisions of GA and of the committee. It's very objective, it's adopted. Para 4, recommending to GA the accreditation of 29 NGOs. Are there any objections or questions? Seeing none, para 4 is adopted. Para 5, deciding on the renewal of the accreditation of 42 NGOs. Seeing no objection, adopted. Para 6, terminating the accreditation of 17 NGOs which have not demonstrated their contribution and commitment to the work of the committee. Are there any objections? Seeing none, para 6, adopted. Para 7, acknowledging the need to reflect on the relevance of the current accreditation system. Are there any comments, objections? I think we already have heard some very good suggestions. So, para 7, adopted. Para 8, inviting the Secretariat to reflect on possible ways forward and report to the committee at its 13th session next year. Philippines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Since this issue is an issue which calls the attention of all states parties as well as reflected in the discussion, we have a proposal here to this paragraph to invite, and it's a way to facilitate discussion among states parties with accredited NGOs. So invites the informal ad hoc working group and the Secretariat. We know that under a different agenda item, we will talk about the report of the ad hoc working group, and I think the consensus, well, we don't want to preempt the decision, but the consensus, I think, is to extend that mandate of the informal ad hoc working group. So we could invite this group, which would be open to committee members and states parties, to continue to also have reflections. I think we should not limit the discussion to just the Secretariat. We should get inputs from all states parties, since it is the mandate of the committee and as ratifying states parties to the convention to promote the objectives and the spirit of the convention through, among others, engagement with civil society and accredited NGOs. Thank you.
Philippines, can you elaborate some specific language or on the screen invites the informal ad hoc working group and the secretariat? All right, okay, yeah. So, Palestine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like just to thank our colleague from Philippines. Indeed, his suggestion is absolutely appropriate, and we would like to support his proposal because, as he mentioned, this reflection concerns not only the Secretariat, but also member states and especially members of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Palestine, and Turkey, Hungary, and Turkey first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like, sorry, Mr. Chair, it's the last day of our meeting and I think I'm a bit confused. We would like to support the proposal that came from Philippines. That's very relevant. But we are not quite sure if we should put the informal ad hoc working group to first because it reads as such that informal ad hoc working group will also consult with the accredited NGOs. If the reading is as such, we don't think it would be appropriate for us as state parties to also consult with the NGOs, but I think it's more appropriate if Secretariat does it with the NGOs. But in the meantime, in parallel to that, as state parties, we reflected among ourselves the role of the NGOs. So if we could shift the wording, starting by invites the Secretariat, I don't know, some wording in these lines, if I'm clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Turkey. Now I give the floor to Hungary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I would also like to thank our colleague from the Philippines for proposing this amendment, and Hungary would like to be added to the list of co-sponsors. From our side, we like the original wording because if the moment comes, we believe that a consultation with the NGOs and the ad hoc working group could be useful. So from our side, we are completely comfortable with the original wording. Maybe we could change and say invites the Secretariat and the informal ad hoc working group. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Hungary, and I'm asking delegation of Turkey. There are some proposals that as it is, and Turkey proposed some disposition of ad hoc working group and the Secretariat. The positioning of ad hoc working group, but Turkey, are you okay with the formulation as it is, or can you propose? Okay, Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are not against, for sure, to consult with the accredited NGOs, but in the context of the informal ad hoc working group, the setting so far, from our experience, would not enable us to do so in an efficient manner because we will have a lot of things to do in the working group that we will discuss it in the coming agenda item. And I'm not sure if we have time also to consult with the NGOs, at least this year. Otherwise, if we continue to work next year, we may consider consulting the NGOs as well. And we are very much open to it, but it would be more, if the Secretariat could do that work and their work could fit into our work, could be even more appropriate. But if the consensus in the room is to go along with the original, we won't be against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Turkey. Now I give the floor to Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We prefer the original formulation, but we could be flexible in the placing, and we thank the distinguished colleague from Hungary. If it's agreeable, then to put it after the Secretariat, that's no problem. And just to respond to our distinguished colleague from Turkey, it's a recommendation, it's an invitation. The ad hoc working group could then be free to determine its procedures and timeline as well. So it's just an invitation. It doesn't necessarily have to finish such work. It could be, we see it much more as a continuing possibility, but the issue itself is very important, and there's no other way, Mr. Chairperson, to consult on this in a way, in a kind of organized fashion, rather than the ad hoc working group, which has been a useful practice, not just here, but in other committees as well. So we'd like to keep the original, but we're okay with moving it after the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippines. So I think we must have consensus. New para 8 edition of the informal ad hoc working group after the Secretariat. So any other strong objections to this new edition after Secretariat, the informal ad hoc working group? Seeing no objection, para 8 is adopted as amended. Para 9, encouraging NGOs from underrepresented electoral groups to submit requests for accreditation. We have debated and fully, so I see no objections. Para 9 adopted. We have now adopted each of the paras, and we need to adopt the decision as a whole. Seeing no objections, okay. Before taking the decision, I give the floor to St. Lucia.
Mr. Chairman, apologies. I know we have adopted 6, and probably my mind was working very slow. It's the last day, but there is a little concern I have, and I just want to express it for the records, and that is in relation to the NGOs that we have agreed to terminate their accreditation. In the light of our concerns about the imbalance, the regional imbalance, the huge imbalance, I see we are terminating at least 3 from regions close to me who really have little representation: Cuba, Vietnam, and Brazil. And I would have liked to talk a little bit about the termination of these in the view of we already have such a heavy imbalance, and then we have these that we are terminating. I see there's no member from Cuba here to defend it, to talk about it. But I just wanted to register the concern. I know we have already adopted 6, but just for the purpose of registering it, it is a concern that I have, that we are terminating what we already do not have, and we are terminating the little that we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, St. Lucia. I think your concerns will be taken note of seriously by our committee members. And having said this, I therefore declare decision 12.com/17 as a whole is adopted. Okay. Mr. Secretary, do you have something to add up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I just wanted to address the concerns, and very valid concerns, raised by St. Lucia. Indeed, a number of non-governmental organizations were not renewed because they simply did not respond or reply to the reporting. So when we do not receive and we send to all NGOs on their reporting on their activities, we simply have no basis to justify the renewal of their accreditation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Yeah, this one. Okay, let's get back to item 18. Dear colleagues, before we continue with the next item, I am pleased to announce that the counting of ballots concerning the new members of the evaluation body has been completed. 23 committee members were present and voted. The following candidates received votes as follows. Electoral Group 3, seat for 1 accredited NGO. For this Electoral Group 3, the situation was clean slate, so the NGO Erigaye Foundation is elected. Electoral Group 4, seat for 1 accredited NGO. The NGO Oral Tradition Association, OTA, received 4 votes. The NGO El Jain Cultural Research Center, IGN CRC, received 6 votes. The NGO Korea Cultural Heritage Foundation, CHF, received 13 votes and is elected. Electoral Group 5B, seat for 1 expert. The expert, Abdelaziz Houedi from Jordan, received 6 votes. The expert, Syed Al-Busaidi from Oman, received 17 votes and is elected. We now have the names of the 3 new members of the evaluation body. I wish to congratulate them and at the same time thank all other candidates. We are therefore ready to proceed with the adoption of the draft decision. Please refer to document 18 and its draft decision in para 9. Can we see it on screens? May I ask the committee to adopt draft decision 12.18 as shown on the screens? Let us proceed para by para. Para 1, citing the document we have examined. No objections, I think, adopted. Para 2, recalling the convention, operational directives, and the rules of procedure. Do I see any objections? Adopted. Para 3, are there any objections? None. Adopted. Para 4, are there any objections? None. It's adopted. Para para 5 new members, I think it's a gist of this draft decision. So para 5, scroll slowly. Group 5B, Syed Al-Busaidi, Oman. And accredited NGO Group 3, Erigaye Foundation. Group 4, Korea Cultural Heritage Foundation, CHF. I think it's correctly reflected. And the remaining is the same. I think the addition of new members duly and correctly reflected on the draft decision. So its para 5 is adopted. We have now adopted each of the paras, and we need to adopt the decision as a whole. Seeing no objections, I therefore declare decision 12.18 adopted as amended. I congratulate the new members elected to the evaluation body and wish them good luck with their tasks ahead. Yeah, we have still many agenda items to be dealt with. 5A and some other agenda items will be discussed afternoon meeting. We now move on to item 13, report of the informal ad hoc working group. Dear colleagues, a very high number of decisions that the committee took decisions last year on nominations, proposals, and the requests that reverse the recommendations of the evaluation body for the 2016 cycle. The committee decided to inscribe 17 out of 24 files, 70%, even though the recommendations by the evaluation body on these files were not favorable. On number of cases, the committee found that these negative recommendations were presented to the committee because of missing information of a minor and technical nature. I myself remember that many delegates expressed concerns as to the fact that no mechanism currently exists in the procedure allowing submitting states to respond to the concerns raised by the EB before their cases are brought to the committee members. This unusual situation prompted the committee to take two interrelated actions. The committee asked the Secretariat to propose a procedure which would allow submitting state to respond to the preliminary recommendations in the evaluation cycle before the files are presented to the committee. The issue has become to be called a dialogue mechanism amongst the committee members. We will study the Secretariat's proposal in this sense under item 12, which will come after this item. The committee also decided at the same time to establish an ad hoc working group to discuss issues related, let us say, to the content of the dialogue mechanism. That is the subject of this agenda item. As I informed you, and the Bureau revised our timetable on Tuesday, the order of examination of items 12 and 13 was switched around because it became clear that we cannot meaningfully examine item 12 without first going through item 13. Dear colleagues, let us remind us that the committee established this informal ad hoc working group to examine a number of points. They are issues related to the consultation and the dialogue between the EB and the submitting states. The decision-making process of the Committee on Nominations, Proposals, and Requests, as well as any other issue in order to strengthen the implementation of the Convention. I had the pleasure to chair this meeting. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the participating states for sharing their points of view and for the spirit of cooperation. The informal ad hoc working group met on several occasions in the course of this year, and its report, as prepared by the group, is annexed to this document. The group's first meeting was held on 16 February 2016 to discuss the agenda and the composition of the working group. In the interest of time and efficiency, the group decided to hold 2 initial meetings open only to the committee members before holding an open-ended meeting. In this way, the restricted group would present a concrete proposal to the wider group of state parties. Accordingly, committee members met on 27 February and 10 May, while an open-ended meeting was held on 2nd of June. As the discussion evolved, members of the working group felt the necessity of consulting the evaluation body. Therefore, on a first instance, 2 members of the evaluation body participated in the group's meeting on 10 May through Skype in their individual capacity. Subsequently, with the evaluation body's agreement and thanks to the help of the Secretariat, the committee members in the group could meet 27 September on all 12 members of the EB who were physically present for their September meeting. I convened the working group for the last time on 23rd October in an open-ended meeting with the aim to validate the group's report. It is important to mention that a drafting group was created and the 6 meetings took place under the chairmanship of His Excellency Mr. Munir Anastas, Ambassador of Palestine. I'd like to sincerely thank Ambassador Munir and the drafting group for their efforts. The drafting group complemented the work of the working group by mediating different opinions and drafting the report of the working group. The deliberations of the ad hoc working group raised many questions, such as, should the dialogue be limitedly open for certain criteria? How many questions the evaluation body could ask? What type of questions could be asked? Both minor additional information and clarification, or just clarification? Under which condition the dialogue can be initiated? When a submitting state answers to questions from the evaluation body, should the answer be limited in terms of word count? If so, how many words could be allowed? While the group was reaching consensus on many issues, the committee members of the ad hoc group met all members of the EB on 27 September this year, in the margin of their final meeting in Paris. The EB shared their view that it is too premature to consider a new dialogue procedure. The body pointed out that a number of measures have been put in place recently to improve the nomination process, such as the revisions of the nomination from R5 and the extension of the referral option to all listing mechanisms. According to the evaluation body, the committee should give time at least until the end of the 2019 cycle for such recent measures to take effect before assessing their effectiveness and before considering the establishment of a formal dialogue process. The ad hoc working group also reflected on other issues, such as decision-making process of the committee, introduction of a so-called deferral option, nature of the representative list, And finally, other methods to improve the work of the committee. As you can see in the document 13, the conclusion and the recommendations of the working group are well reflected in the draft decision. One of the main conclusions is that the working group wishes to continue its reflection, so the draft decision laid out before you proposes to extend the mandate of the group with a view to continuing the reflection on how to improve the governance of the committee, including the dialogue mechanism, as well as on other issues within its mandate. I'd like to thank again the informal ad hoc working group for having undertaken very fruitful discussions that would contribute to the development and the governance of the 2003 Convention. It is crucial that we find the time to reflect and exchange options on various issues related to the implementation of the normative instruments outside the committee and other decision-making organs settings. Before opening the floor, I will give the floor to Mr. Tim Curtis to give us some clarification regarding the extension of the mandate of the working group. So I now give the floor to our secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Regarding the recommendation of the working group in paragraph 16 of the report, I would like to point out that the extension of the working group's mandate are decided at a committee session in accordance with Article 8.3 of the Convention and Rule 20 of the Rules of Procedure of the Committee. I would also like to take this opportunity to reiterate that, as it was the case this year, limited human and financial resources means that we will not be providing secretariat services to the group if its mandate is extended. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis, for the clear explanation. I now open the floor. Do you have any comments or questions on the report? Does anybody wishing to Turkey?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let me start by thanking you personally for chairing our working group and our co-chair ambassador of Palestine, Munir, for the work you have carried out this year, which was not easy at all. Turkey has contributed actively to the work of the informal working group. We have been a member of the working group established under the World Heritage Committee and even chaired it in 2016. Regarding the 2003 Convention, our position has been clear since the beginning of our work. At the end of our discussions in the group, we haven't reached a consensus on all items, but we tried our best to understand other state parties. We understood from our discussions that there is a request from some countries for more dialogue between the evaluation body and state parties based on the experience of the World Heritage Committee. However, it's important to underline the fact that World Heritage Committee and its logic of inscriptions are very different from that of the ICH. We can certainly learn lessons from the experience of implementing the World Heritage Convention. However, it's not possible to directly compare these two conventions. Each convention has its own dynamics, aims, and modalities. We're not against the dialogue. Let me clearly state that. In fact, we're promoting dialogue wherever possible in the World Heritage Convention particularly. But what we understand from the dialogue in this convention is different than the 1972 convention. In this convention, evaluation body is evaluating the file itself, not the OUV of an element. In order to increase the quality of the files, we believe technical assistance is required. To us, this is the area where we should focus our work, how to assist state parties in their preparations for a better nomination file. On the other hand, we very much welcome the recommendations of the evaluation body. though it came at a later stage in our deliberations. However, this was the first time that the committee has worked throughout the year as a working group in the context of this convention, a new experience for everyone. Therefore, the working group was a learning experience for all of us under this convention. In fact, it created a working culture among the Secretariat, states parties, and the evaluation body. In that sense, we consider it as a useful exercise. The work of the group shed a light for our future work. However, at this stage, it's time to give some time for the implementation of the recommendations of the evaluation body. As a matter of fact, the dual option recommended by the evaluation body has already had a positive impact on our nominations. We have already seen the positive changes in favor of submitting states. In this regard, we should refrain in extending the mandate of the working group for further analysis of the dialogue mechanism. We need to see first how the evaluation body's recommendations would affect positively on the process itself. As we mentioned earlier, the working group should consider the funding system of the convention as a whole. We also believe that the working group should consider the governance decision of the last General Conference. Before concluding, we would like to request from the Secretariat to annex the notes submitted by the evaluation body dated 27 September 2017 to the report of the group as a reference for future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Turkey, and I recognize distinguished delegates of Philippines and Austria. But before giving the floor to Philippines, may I ask our distinguished delegates in this hall, during the informal ad hoc working group that I chaired and the drafting committee chaired by Palestine Ambassador Munir, we have discussed, I think, with sufficient time, and we couldn't reach a consensus conclusion. So may I ask my dear colleagues here, do not try to open again what we have discussed and what we haven't reached consensus. For example, the philosophical approach. What's the difference between ICH and the WHC? We are fully informed and explained by Mr. Francesco Bandarin, our ADG for Culture, and also we heard directly from the evaluation body, 12 members. So I think if there are some that kind of philosophical approach, we can continue during our ongoing working group undertaking. So just limit your flow to the point and as brief and as short as you can. Thank you. Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. We thank the ad hoc working group for its report, especially you as chair of the working group and the delegation of the Republic of Korea, and the chair of the drafting group, Ambassador Munir, for the numerous meetings conducted in Paris. We hope to see the decision-making steps recommended by the ad hoc working group implemented at future sessions. We'd like to focus our remarks on the issue of dialogue. Our delegation has emphasized throughout this session that promoting the convention and enhancing the credibility of the committee are shared responsibilities. While we recognize the views of the evaluation body, the Secretariat, and some committee members, we strongly believe that procedural and administrative considerations should not trump the larger interests and will of states parties to the convention and communities. Dialogue should not be seen as a burden, but an added value. Dialogue is in fact enshrined in Article 16 of the Convention as a purpose of the representative list. It also builds trust and understanding between states parties and the evaluation body, and we call for its integration into the evaluation system. If we wish to ensure the lists in fact promote inclusivity, if we want a system in fact distinct from the World Heritage system of a top-down OUV approach, if we wish to reduce costs for states parties and make the work of the Secretariat and evaluation body more efficient, if we agree on the need to limit politicization when files that do not meet substantive criteria are regularly inscribed anyway by our committee after receiving last-minute additional information from submitting states parties, then we must have a dialogue mechanism. in place so that situations like the ones we experienced last year in Addis and on the file on Laos here do not occur anymore. The state party should be given advance information on questions or clarifications requested and ample time to supply these to the evaluation body before its final recommendations. This dialogue does not have to be costly or complicated, and we see that there is a need to further refine it. And we note that the initial reaction of the evaluation body and secretariat was positive. They came later and saying that we needed to put a little time and to put brakes on the proposal, which we acknowledge. But we also wish to emphasize that at this stage, no one is against the dialogue. We note Mr. Curtis's comment, but we hope that if the ad hoc working group is extended, that the Secretariat would be so kind to attend the meetings if invited as resource speakers. And lastly, Mr. President, we really are not convinced that a mere revision of the nomination forms can replace dialogue. Even with the revised forms, we are sure that we shall again encounter similar challenges. We can assure this. Nevertheless, we're willing to engage on the draft decision and would be interested in hearing the views of other committee members, particularly those not involved in the ad hoc working group, intensively. And depending on the discussions, we're happy to propose amendments also. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippines. Once again, the necessity for have a dialogue process between submitting states and the evaluation body through Secretariat. In principle, we agreed the principle, but during our working group, long meetings, we have agreed. And we heard fully from the evaluation body, and it's another, we will not have a dialogue process, not that we will have, but a little, they asked some postponement, postpone to another cycle, as we have introduced, as we have undertaken by introducing the dual system and the new form of R5 inventory, etc. So there will be no need to further discuss regarding the necessity of importance of dialogue process between submitting states and EB through Secretariat and with our committee members. Having said this, I'd like to give the floor to Austria.
Thank you. First of all, please let us thank the delegation of the Republic of Korea for facilitating and for chairing the ad hoc working group established to discuss, on the one hand, the dialogue between the evaluation body and the submitting states, and then also on the decision-making process. We particularly appreciate that the chair organized also 2 open-ended meetings that allowed all state parties to contribute to this important discussion. And we also welcome that the evaluation body was consulted in that process and thank them for their very useful contributions. The working group has had extensive discussions about a vast number of ideas relating to the inscription process and came up with a proposal to change the evaluation cycle in order to allow for state parties to revise their nominations after a negative evaluation by the evaluation body. Our delegation is 100% in favor of dialogue and any measure that helps state parties to submit files of high quality. But after having heard the opinion of the evaluation body on the proposal, and especially taking into account the view of the Secretariat, we are glad that the working group agreed to postpone any decision on changing the operational directives to a later moment. We fully concur with the opinion expressed by members of the evaluation body that we should first evaluate the impact of the measures already taken to improve the examination process, such as the modified application form for R5. Ideally, the General Assembly would look into this issue again at its 8th session in 2020, when it will be in a position to make a qualified decision. More generally, we are of the opinion that a dialogue between state parties, the Secretariat, and the evaluation body can take various forms, and that we should look into other lighter options before taking any decision. We also think that it would be useful to consider these questions from a broader angle in the context of a debate about the nature and purpose of the lists. On a different note, since the members of the evaluation body are elected by us, the committee members, the committee should in principle follow the evaluation body's recommendations, while of course preserving its decision-making prerogative. As a general principle, we strongly feel that member states in UNESCO should continue taking their decisions by consensus. To conclude, we welcome the proposal to take a step back and allow the working group to continue the reflections on the governance of the committee if need be. However, as a first step, we should wait for the positions expressed by the General Assembly in June. Then we will have a better picture if and which questions are still open. Thank you.
Thank you, Austria and Algeria, Hungary, and Algeria first.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais être bref, Monsieur le Président. Tout d'abord, nous vous remercions et saluons le travail que vous avez effectué en tant que président du groupe de travail sur la gouvernance. Honnêtement, votre rapport a été déterminant. Ensuite, nous sommes, comme vous le savez bien, pour le dialogue et surtout pour l'inclusivité. L'organisation onusienne dans son ensemble est basée sur cette action de dialoguer fait avancer les choses. Et c'est tout ce que nous souhaitons. Nous souhaitons que l'organe d'évaluation et les pays membres dialoguent. Et surtout, nous souhaitons pouvoir continuer de dialoguer entre nos États membres et de façon inclusive afin de faciliter nos travail. Effectivement, le dual option qui nous a été proposé et la révision des formes va peut-être aider le comité à prendre des décisions plus rapides. Toutefois, nous avons constaté lors de notre comité qu'en fin de compte, on a eu le dialogue qu'on a demandé, mais on l'a eu pendant le comité. Et c'est ce que nous voulions éviter, ça veut dire de perdre beaucoup de temps. Le temps du comité est précieux, il est coûteux, et nous souhaitions peut-être faire les choses a priori. Cela dit, ma délégation s'associe à la déclaration qui a été faite par la délégation du Philippines qui expresse nos positions de manière plus éloquente. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nassim Mohand, distinguished delegate of Algeria. Now I give the floor to Hungary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be very brief since a lot has been said before me with which the Hungarian delegation can fully concur, especially very well phrased and put forward by the Philippine delegation, by the delegation from the Philippines, and we thank them very much for this precise formulation, in particular concerning the dialogue, its necessity. We also welcome the point mentioned by Turkey that technical assistance may also be necessary in the preparation of nomination files. We would rather call this upstream advice, perhaps. Indeed, sometimes the feeling is that there are concurrent mechanisms, such as the capacity building program, the communication of the convention, and dialogue. And we believe that with these simultaneous mechanisms, the nominations will improve because the public, as well as states parties and all stakeholders, will be better aware of the objectives of the convention, of the different lists, and with the capacity building exercise, they will be better equipped to prepare nomination files as well. So we think this in a more holistic manner, and we also agree that this whole problematic of the listing mechanism and the objectives of listings ties up with what has been discussed before in this committee. So we are very much in favor of continuing the work of this working group with the broadened mandate that this committee is about to give to it under other agenda items as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Hungary. And after hearing Senegal, I'd like to close the speakers list on Palestine. Okay, Senegal and Palestine on the part of our committee members, and later I give the floor to observer member of Japan later before proceeding to adoption of draft decision. So Senegal first, followed by Palestine. Senegal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je m'associe aux autres pour féliciter le groupe de travail qui a conduit ces travaux dans un esprit participatif, inclusif, ouvert. Nous sommes d'accord avec tout le monde que le dialogue est incontournable, mais également l'assistance est souhaitable, l'assistance aux États parties en amont dans la préparation des dossiers. Seulement, comment et avec quelle procédure est-ce que nous sommes prêts à plaquer des expériences d'autres conventions sans voir est-ce qu'elles sont adaptées ou non à notre réalité? C'est que tout le monde fait allusion à la convention de 72, c'est clair. Mais ce qui se passe à la 72 avec les organismes consultatifs, UCN, ICOMOS, n'est pas exactement la même chose que nous avons avec l'organe d'évaluation. Ce n'est pas la même histoire, ce n'est pas le même processus. Même si maintenant l'expérience dans l'esprit devait guider le dialogue, la communication, oui, mais on ne peut pas plaquer les mêmes expériences de l'autre côté. Ce n'est pas possible pour le moment. Alors, poursuivons la réflexion. La réflexion, on la poursuit, on évalue les mesures alternatives qui ont été prises. Tout le monde est d'accord avec moi que Addis est différent de Jéju. Ce qu'on a vu à Addis n'est pas du tout ce qu'on a vécu ici. Quand même, il y a eu une évolution dans les prises de décision par rapport aux candidatures. Il y a vraiment eu une évolution positive. Maintenant, que le dialogue ait lieu à partir d'ici et non avant, oui, nous le regrettons, mais il y a quand même une évolution positive. Donc, ne nous attendons pas à prendre des mesures brutales sans les évaluer, sans évaluer les mesures alternatives. Continuons la réflexion, reportons les décisions, attendons de mûrir et d'approfondir les mesures les plus adaptées à la Convention, et je pense que c'est vraiment la position que la délégation du Sénégal voudrait, si vous voulez, proposer. Le report est bon pour nous, pour permettre la réflexion et approfondir les mesures à prendre dans l'avenir. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Senegal. So I think it's any kind of reform or improvement of a system or mechanism is not an event, it's a process. So as just rightly pointed out, delegate of Senegal, we are moving, even though very slowly, but moving in the right direction. And having said this, I now give the floor to Palestine and followed by Cyprus. Palestine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought I was the last member of the committee to take the floor. Actually, I'm not going to repeat what has been said, and it would be false to say that I agree with all what have been said. But first, let me thank you as chair of our working group. You did a great job, and I would like also to thank you for having entrusted me the drafting group. I would like to thank all members of the committee who participated actively in the work of our group. And indeed, as you mentioned, it is a process and it will take time. This is UNESCO time. We know to reform something in UNESCO, it takes time. For other conventions, it took about 30 years to implement one reform. And I'm talking about the distributions of seats in the 72 convention. Everybody knows the question. But as for the interventions that has been done, I can't agree with everything that has been said, but I agree fully with the statement of our colleague from Philippines. I think that it is indeed, for the moment, we need to wait the outcome as proposed by the secretariats and the advisory body, but we need to keep in mind that the dialogue process for sure will be something needed in the future. So that's why I think we need to keep it in mind, and when we give the mandate to the next working group, we need to have it on their agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Palestine. Now Cyprus.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Chypre fait aussi partie du groupe de travail et je voulais m'aligner avec Philippines et l'Algérie pour le dialogue entre l'organe d'évaluation et les États parties. Comme ça, on va éviter ce qui s'est passé pendant l'examen des dossiers ici à Jeju. Comme ça, les amendements, au lieu de les faire pendant le comité où on va perdre du temps, le dialogue, il va faciliter ces problèmes du comité. Merci.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Cyprus. I now give the floor to Japan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the ICH experts from Japan, I would like to make one comment concerning the discussion on criteria for evaluating the nominating file. We believe that R1, U1 out of 5 criteria is crucial because R1, U1 is asking about the community, the practitioners of nominated ICH. You cannot have traditional cultural practice to be transmitted without the community. It is like a car without its engine. This car exists itself, however, it will never run since it is the engine that keeps the car going. In the case of ICH, engines are the people, and that is what we need in order to ensure the safeguarding of ICH. R1, U1 clearly asks this very point of identifying the community who has transmitted and will transmit the nominated ICH. Moreover, R1, U1 asks whether the nominated element constitutes ICH as defined in the convention. In another word, if the nomination file does not provide enough information to decide whether the element is ICH or not, the file is obviously insufficient and should be referred back to the submitting party. Further, the information in R1 relates closely to the other criteria. If the element does not constitute ICH, then it will not be able to increase the visibility of ICH in general, as asked into R2. Therefore, the discussion should be more comprehensive and review not just criteria 2 and 5. Thank you.
I thank observer delegation of Japan. And I now recognize another observer member of Switzerland. You have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous remercions la présidence pour la mise en œuvre et l'excellente conduite du groupe de travail ad hoc, et en particulier de l'avoir ouvert aux États parties. Il nous semble important que les questions de gouvernance, et dans ce cas celle du processus décisionnel et du statut des recommandations de l'organe d'évaluation, soient discutées de manière inclusive, en associant tous les États membres, et nous avons bénéficié de cette ouverture en participant à une réunion. Nous considérons, comme déjà mentionné par l'Autriche et beaucoup d'autres délégations, qu'il est nécessaire de poursuivre le processus de réflexion et de prendre le temps nécessaire pour formuler des recommandations à l'Assemblée générale. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, observer delegation of Switzerland. May I ask the committee to adopt draft decision 12.13 as shown on the screens? Let us proceed para by para. Para 1, citing the document we examined. No objection, adopted. Para 2 is the procedural, is the recalling previous decisions. Adopted. Para 3, also procedural one, adopted. Para 4, commending the work of the working group, is a good thing. Adopted. Para 5, taking note of the EB's view on the establishment of a formal dialogue process. I see Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before this paragraph, we'd like to add a new paragraph, please, which we'll read at this dictation speed. So it would be a new 5. Recognizes the importance of dialogue to enhance the evaluation process. This, I think, reflects the debate we just had, that no one was against dialogue and, in fact, reaffirmed its importance. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippines, for your proposal. As I said earlier, everybody who participated in the informal ad hoc working group, including evaluation body and the secretariat and our members, we recognize the importance of a dialogue process. So can we adopt new proposed amendment para 5 proposed by Philippines? I see no objections. New para 5 is adopted. Para 6. No comments, no objections. Para 6 adopted as it is. Para 7, we have proposed amendments by Turkey, Austria, Ethiopia. Decides to postpone the discussion on the establishment of a formal dialogue process. Philippines?
Thank you, Chair. We listened very closely during the debate, and since we were also actively engaged in the ad hoc working group in Paris, we are prepared, in fact, to give more time to refine the proposed dialogue mechanism and with a view to making it a lighter procedure. But we have some amendments to the amendment proposed by the distinguished colleagues from Turkey, Austria, and Ethiopia to maybe add precision and reflect the discussions we had. So we thank them for this proposal, but we'd suggest decides to consider instead of postpone. To consider the establishment, so to strike out postpone the discussion on. Decides to consider the establishment of a, well, in our view, we don't need really the formal and to put the dialogue in brackets. It could just be to consider the establishment of a dialogue process or mechanism between the evaluation body and nominating states parties. I'll start from the top. Decides to consider the establishment of a dialogue process between the evaluation body and nominating states parties at its 14th session in 2019. So just to repeat one last time, decides to consider the establishment of a dialogue process between the evaluation body and nominating states parties at its 14th session in 2019. Again, maybe we don't need to have formal and dialogue in parentheses. And just a last word, Mr. President, just to say that consideration doesn't mean, that we will make that decision the way it is. So it does give us flexibility should we consider otherwise. Thank you. And we would get rid of the last part to give time for adjustments introduced by, since the paragraph before 6 already mentions that, we think it's superfluous here. And to just have the formal decision very precise that we decide to consider this issue at our 19th session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philippines. Philippines just proposed some the compromise language, a little milder one. Instead of postpone, it's just consider. So before inviting further comments, I'd like to give the Secretariat if there are anything to add.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The Secretariat feels that it would be more correct to talk about the submitting states than the nominating states. Thank you.
Now it's time to give the floor one of the original proposals, Turkey, Austria, Ethiopia. I recognize the Turkey.
Is the Secretariat reflecting the original proposal? Because we would like to see that as well. And, well, I understand from the statement of Philippines that the rationale behind it, but then we're not giving enough time to consider what the evaluation body has suggested. Our inclination is to have that time to reflect on how the dialogue process evolved after all the amendments that we had, and then to discuss it, to reflect it in the next committee, and then in order to make an informed decision after discussion at the next committee, we can make our mind in order how to proceed. But that will not give us enough time to reflect. So I think I will have to insist with the proposal that we made on the para 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Turkey, Philippines, and Palestine.
Thank you, Chair.
Philippines first.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate, again, the response of our distinguished colleague from Turkey. But we made this proposal in relation to the previous paragraph that was adopted, which includes everything that our distinguished colleague had just mentioned about the need for, the revised forms to see their effects. So please read our proposal of a new 7 in relation to the 6, which already mentions it. Before considering the step, it's all there. The number of adjustments, that's there. So it's a continuation of 6, but with a more precise reflection of the debate we had. Thank you.
Now Palestine.
Well, actually, now no need to intervene. My colleague from Philippines said exactly what I wanted to say. Our colleague from Turkey did not pay maybe attention to the previous paragraph, and the proposal do give time, as we mentioned. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Palestine. Now Turkey.
Thank you to my colleagues from Philippines and Palestine, but actually we did pay attention to that. But the problem here is when you say consider the establishment, it means that you will establish that in that meeting. So maybe we need to change that, the verb, and maybe decide to reflect further on the establishment of a dialogue process.
I think we have to look for some midpoint. It's Algeria.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. Effectivement, si vous le permettez, si les délégations qui ont présenté les deux paragraphes me permettent, je pense que si on prenait l'amendement qui était fait par les Philippines et reprendre, au lieu de dire décider d'envisager, mais décider de reprendre, to reconvene, de reprendre ces débats relatifs au, et le reste sans changement, donc relatifs au processus de dialogue, etc., cela donnera plus de sens. Donc on ne présuppose rien, on ne souhaite pas préempter les décisions du comité, donc on dirait juste reprendre ces débats relatifs à l'établissement d'un processus, voilà, ces débats.
I'm wondering how to consider and resume which one is a stronger terminology. Consider resuming maybe. Anyway, Palestine. No, it's the Philippines followed by Turkey.
Thank you, Chair. We're prepared to accept the Algerian compromise formulation on the understanding that the extended ad hoc working group will continue to refine the proposed dialogue mechanism. If not, then we would keep consider. Thank you.
Turkey?
Well, we can go along with the proposal made by Algeria because we believe that we have extensively discussed dialogue last year at the ad hoc working group, and we don't see how we can refine the dialogue mechanism without seeing the actual outcome of the amendments made. So for us, it's really problematic because we don't have enough evidence to discuss on. So it will be basically a repetition of what we have done throughout this year. The discussion will be the same to us. But we can go along with the proposal made by Algeria on this understanding, of course. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Turkey. Austria.
Thank you. We think that it's important to take a step back in order also to allow the General Assembly to take its decisions, but we can also accept the proposal forwarded by Algeria to resume the discussions then after the 14th session, because then it gives also the General Assembly a possibility to express its views, which is very important.
Thank you, Austria. Now, Philippines.
Thank you, Chair. We suggest maybe to suspend adoption of this paragraph until we finish the paragraph on the mandate, because we can only agree to resume the discussion if in the mandate of the extended ad hoc working group, the further refinement of the appropriate dialogue mechanism is included. Why? I don't think we would repeat our discussions. We can learn from the debate here. We know that also that the proposed dialogue mechanism that the ad hoc working group has formulated, maybe many have said that it's a bit heavy, that we can already continue to look at how it can be made lighter, less procedural, less administratively costly for the Secretariat, which has financial and human resource constraints, also to make it easier for the evaluation body. I think these are serious questions, and that discussion should not be stopped. If discussion is stopped, then we would have to change the wording on this paragraph. So we suggest to suspend here, and if it's included in the mandate of the ad hoc working group, then we can agree to resume the discussion as proposed by Algeria, but not otherwise, Mr. President.
Yeah, we are almost there. So Palestine and Hungary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that the proposal of our colleague from Philippines is absolutely appropriate, and we do support. Let us keep the paragraph between brackets and discuss the mandate of the ad hoc working group, and then we'll come back to it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hungary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also wanted to support the suspension of debate on this para, as in the way suggested by Philippines, to move forward to subsequent paragraphs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, upon the request by several delegations, we will suspend deliberations on this para, and we'll move on to para 8. Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any amendments to make. We will go along with the adoption, but just want to reiterate what we have said during our statement. If Secretariat could annex the report of the evaluation body to the report of informal ad hoc working group to the General Assembly. We just want it to be annexed to the evaluation body's report to be annexed to this report.
Okay, thank you, Turkey. Maybe Secretariat will give an explanation.
Which evaluate? You are talking about the evaluation report adopted here. I'm not sure what evaluation body report you're talking about. Thank you.
Turkey, please.
No, it's an one-pager evaluation body's report published on 27th of September, I believe, which is a reflection on the dialogue process, because this is complementing the report, the discussion that we had during the ad hoc working group. That's why. Thank you.
Yeah, Secretariat. Yeah. No, Secretariat, you understood. Yes. Yeah, what requested by Turkey. Okay. So, para 8. So can I ask Turkey that we can approve, adopt 8 as it is, and with the understanding that the annex will be attached. Okay, thank you. So para 8 is adopted. Para 9, we have a proposed amendment by several countries. Cuba.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Concernant le paragraphe 8, c'est bien que le document sera annexé, mais on doit donner la possibilité à l'Assemblée générale et à l'Assemblée d'États parties de faire un débat sur ces questions. Parce que si simplement on ajoute, on annexe les documents, sera d'une façon informative. Et je pense que l'Assemblée générale, il peut poser ces questions, il réfléchir et donner son avis concernant ces mécanismes. Je ne voudrais pas modifier le paragraphe 8, mais c'est très important que dans votre rapport oral, il peut rester ici. Merci.
Okay, I hope the Secretariat will take note of your concerns expressed by Cuba. And let's get back to para 9, Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we were presenting this amendment, we were thinking that we will be able by that time to finish the technical reflection on the transfer. So the 3 will be redundant, so we can maybe delete that part. Thank you.
Thank you, Turkey. Philippines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, and I think we'll be very close and can finish soon. We have a new small one based on the discussions on the previous paragraph that was put in brackets. So to put in the small one, to further reflect on an appropriate dialogue mechanism, comma, in consultation with the evaluation body. So we're not doing this alone. And we had a very good meeting with the evaluation body throughout, meetings with the evaluation body, first in the beginning with the chair and previous chair, and then at the end in September with the whole body. And that proved to be very fruitful. That should be continued, I think. And if we're going to come up with a good solution, I think we have to do it in partnership. And this, I think, it's really important. And this would be the priority, I think, since we've already had many, many long debates. So that's why we're putting it here, and also to work in friendship and partnership. And perhaps the small 2 could be subsumed into 3, just not to make it too heavy. This is our proposal. And just one last comment is that perhaps like the ad hoc working group before, an item on other issues might be able to cover everything. So other issues in relation to the functions of the committee. But I leave other colleagues maybe to comment on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Turkey.
Well, first of all, as I said in my statement, we think that this is, again, be repeating our work that we have done in the last working group. But I see that my colleague from Philippines is really interested in having this, but we cannot accept it as a priority because we have already had extensive discussions. So maybe if we can move to the third, as the third subject, and if we can change to further reflect on dialogue mechanism as appropriate in consultation with the evaluation body, then I would be agreeable to that. Thank you.
Palestine and Austria, Cuba. So Palestine first.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Au tout départ, moi j'ai voulu prendre la parole pour soutenir la proposition de la Philippine, mais après avoir entendu notre collègue de Turquie, et pour ne pas compliquer nos affaires, on peut accepter la proposition, sachant que ça serait l'une des choses sur lesquelles le groupe de travail va se pencher. Et pour cela, moi je souhaite aussi voir quelque part, dans n'importe quel point, le texte qu'on a eu dans le passé, as well as any other issue to enhance and facilitate the work of the committee. So, ça, on peut le mettre quelque part et ça pourrait couvrir les soucis de pas mal de collègues. Donc, as well as any other issues to facilitate the work of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Austria.
Thank you. As mentioned in our statement, we think, and also considering the consultation we had already with the evaluation body and the secretariat, we think it needs to take a step back and wait for the results of the measures that have already been implemented, because of course we know the process is a long one for the nominations. So we were about to suggest to add to the Philippines proposal that we reflect on the dialogue mechanism depending on the respective decisions by the next General Assembly but maybe as appropriate might express a similar idea.
Thank you, Austria. Now, Cuba, Algeria, Philippines. Cuba first.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je préfère la proposition de la Philippine parce que, à notre point de vue, ça doit faire la priorité parce que c'est bien que pendant une année, nous avons réfléchi sur ça, mais on doit continuer le travail. C'est l'accord qu'on avait décidé à l'intérieur des groupes de travail et je pense que c'est le consensus de tous les membres, de tous les États membres du comité. Et de toute façon, je remercie à la Palestine pour cette option qu'ils donnent. Mais c'est très important que sur la décision, c'est clair qu'on va continuer à travailler sur ces questions et que ce n'est pas la question des mécanismes financiers de la Convention, ce n'est pas les plus importantes, ni c'est les uniques questions qu'on va réfléchir. Mais à notre point de vue, on préfère la proposition de la Philippine, mais on continuera à écouter la salle et on sera avec le consensus.
Thank you, Cuba. Algeria.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. Le libellé tel qu'il est affiché à l'écran nous satisfait. Nous souhaiterions juste avoir une précision, ou plutôt donner notre lecture de ce paragraphe-là, le paragraphe 9. Donc, tel qu'il est libellé pour nous, le groupe de travail informel ad hoc passe d'un groupe réservé aux membres du comité à un open-ended. Nous souhaitions juste que les collègues du comité en prennent conscience. Donc, et c'était ce que nous avions appelé de nos voeux lors de la création de ce groupe à Addis Abeba. Pour nous, les questions qui sont discutées dans ce groupe-là sont d'une importance capitale pour la Convention et il convient que les discussions soient ouvertes et inclusives. Et à la fin, nous souhaiterions que les collègues aussi considèrent la possibilité d'inclure dans le mandat du ad hoc working group une discussion sur le outcome de la réunion intergouvernementale concernant le transfert de liste, comme l'a si bien précisé la déléguée d'Autriche quand elle a dit que nous devrions réfléchir à ce mécanisme de dialogue à la lumière de tout ce qui se fera en matière de transfert de liste à liste. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Okay, thank you, Algeria. So, may I ask our dear committee members to be as brief as possible and to the point, please. Philippines.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as mentioned by Cuba, I think the original proposal from us would suffice because that would be the priority. That's why we're here. That's what we're talking about. And indeed, we are very interested in this proposal because we believe it shall ultimately benefit all submitting states parties. So we insist that it be in number 1. We're flexible as to the language, but I think it should go definitely before the funding mechanism. So, and it should probably state to further reflect on an appropriate dialogue mechanism in consultation with the evaluation body. And again, we are prepared to show flexibility in the previous paragraph to put resume discussion. So I think with this, we could probably adopt already and go to lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippines. Côte d'Ivoire.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous pensons que nous avons participé aux travaux du groupe de travail ad hoc et à notre avis, il faut poursuivre le débat sur le mécanisme de dialogue entre les États soumissionnaires et l'organe d'évaluation et continuer à expérimenter les nouveaux mécanismes qui ont été proposés par l'organe d'évaluation. Cela n'est pas contradictoire. Donc, nous soutenons la proposition de la Philippine. Merci.
Hungary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very briefly to the point, support for the Philippines proposal on the dialogue. Strong support for what Algeria said about the open-ended nature of this working group. This is what we already suggested in Addis Ababa last year. Actually, we don't see that reflected on the screen, but we would like to insert open-ended to the name of the working group. An informal, ad hoc, open-ended working group. That's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Hungary. Palestine, Cuba, Turkey, Palestine.
Very, very quickly, Mr. Chair. Again, the same concern like Philippines and others. And still, I don't understand the necessity to put as second priority the question of funding mechanism. Our convention is the only convention who has no problem of funding and financial problems. It could be a little bit less priority. And I agree for the number one that we have now, but number two, maybe we can put it a little bit later. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Cuba, Turkey, Hungary. Cuba first. No. Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I think funding mechanism is an important issue in this convention as well. Why then we discussed extensively during agenda items 6 and 7. So there's no doubt about it. When it comes to the Philippines proposal, I think I can only accept to be the first, to be moved back again to the first priority if then the proposal made by Austria is reflected on the proposal, meaning that the reflection can only be done after the hearing from the General Assembly. Thank you.
Okay, no further comments. I think it's proposed amendment by Philippines and incorporating with Austria. That's the position just stated by Turkey. Philippines.
Mr. Chair, we cannot accept the Austrian proposal because that would mean we could only work on this issue, which is supposed to be a priority after June. That means after the spring, the summer. So that would be September 2018. And then the next committee session, as already agreed, is in November. It would not be a feasible proposal. Thank you.
So Austria, can you withdraw or still you want to keep this wording?
Above, I think we talked about resuming the discussion only at the 14th session, so we think there is no rush to also discuss the issue then in the next 5 or 6 months until the General Assembly has taken its decisions. So I think there is not kind of a very urgent, it is not so urgent to continue the discussions on this topic. On the other hand, there are also other topics, important topics for the working group to discuss, like the other points we have. So I don't think we will get without work in the first half of the year.
Thank you. We are running out of time, so we have to finish this draft decision before lunch break. So be as brief and to the point as you can. Turkey and followed by Philippines.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I'll just second whatever Austria has just said. Thank you. If Secretariat can reflect also /Turkey there. Thank you.
Thank you, Austria and Turkey and the Philippines and Algeria. Philippines.
Mr. President, I mean, to allow, the smooth conduct of our work, we can probably accept the formulation saying that taking into account. But we do not think that the dialogue on the dialogue should be withheld or stopped or take place only after the General Assembly. So take into account, but on the proviso that if the ad hoc working group wishes to take it up, since it's the first priority issue, it shouldn't stop, and the dialogue on the dialogue can take place even before the General Assembly. That's our understanding. Thank you.
Algérie?
Oui, merci Monsieur le Président. Je pense que nous sommes proches d'un consensus avec la proposition des Philippines de prendre en compte les résolutions pertinentes de la prochaine Assemblée générale. Cela va sans dire et ça tombe sous le sens. Toutefois, je ne pense pas qu'il soit sain d'essayer d'arrêter une quelconque discussion. Ce n'est pas dans nos traditions d'empêcher des États membres de discuter de quoi que ce soit s'ils en ont envie. Je vous remercie. Je pense qu'avec le texte tel qu'il est libellé à l'écran, on peut prendre la décision. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Algeria. Côte d'Ivoire, and later, just hearing from Austria and Turkey, we will finalize this para. Côte d'Ivoire.
Je fais sienne les associations faites par mon collègue de l'Algérie pour dire qu'il faut poursuivre le dialogue déjà entamé. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. So it's a kind of some midpoint terminology, depending on, but taking into account. Any Palestine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Palestine have already co-sponsored the original proposal of Philippines, even if it doesn't appear on the screen, but this is not a problem. I think by openness, we would agree on the last proposal of Philippines, taking into account this may settle all the concerns, as mentioned by our colleague also from Algeria, that doesn't appear on the screen, and our colleague from Côte d'Ivoire also, who supported this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Palestine. Now it's Austria and Turkey. Can you agree with the last terminology proposed by several delegations? Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think from our delegation point of view, we really showed some flexibility. So I can go along with taking into account only if we can change the order and come back after the governance. That's the most flexibility that we can show, because I mean, I understand for you dialogue you're saying first, but for our delegation we have extensively discussed an entire year only dialogue. So now we're going back again to square one without having listened to what the General Assembly is going to tell us, without listening to the recommendation of the evaluation body. So to us, this is kind of problematic. I can go along with taking into account only if we can move the paragraph after the governance. Thank you.
No, Philippines.
We would prefer, of course, that it be first priority. But since we want to help you, Mr. Chairperson, to move forward, and we take into account the views of our distinguished colleagues from Turkey and Austria, we can move it to. But then the issue again is, do we put the funding mechanisms first? So of course, so see. Well, then what comes first? The working group on governance, which is totally fine for us too. But on the understanding that, and no more conditions, but this is not a hierarchy. All 3-4 mandates are mandates. So it doesn't really matter what the order is. This is just a symbolic, if you want to have a symbolic, circumstance of one going first, but they're all equal in our view. So with this understanding, we can agree with the Turkish proposal, but you know, it would be up to the ad hoc working group to determine its work. And also that there's no hierarchy between everything there on the screen of the small 1, 2, and 3, that they're all equal, like the criteria for our list. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philippines, for your sense of compromise consensus. Just like our criteria from R1, R5 with the equal weighting. So, Cuba, you wanna? No, okay. Yeah, thank you so much. So, yeah, just scroll up. The Hungary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My comment is more of a technical nature. In our decision this morning under agenda item 17, we added to the mandate of the working group under the NGO accreditation and review mechanism, the consultation on the possible ways in which the participation of NGOs under the convention could be further enhanced. And now this paragraph looks like enumerating the full mandate of the ad hoc working group. We would like that to be reflected here as well as the fourth theme of the mandate. We would not like that formulation that is on the screen, as well as any other issues, because that broadens up the mandate to such an extent that may make the smooth conduct of the work of the working group difficult. So we would like to be precise, and if this paragraph is about spelling out the full mandate of the working group, which it seems to become, then I think our previous decision should also be reflected, which is in decision 17, paragraph 8. I cannot so quickly propose a language, but I'm sure the Secretariat could maybe suggest something over the lunch. And one last question about the technicality of this working group. Last year, when we established it, we also elected a chair. The committee also decided on who chairs this working group. Is there a paragraph coming up on that? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, just 10 seconds. Ambassador Munir of Palestine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very, very quickly, just to answer the concerns of our colleague from Hungary. As for the chair of the working group, usually the use is that the next chair of the committee is the chair of the working group. This is the use. There is no written rule, and this is the practice. As for the other issues to facilitate the work of the committee, if you look in the decision that we took last year, it is also included, and this gives a little bit more flexibility, and we never know if we need to discuss something that is not stipulated. Here, it is a general guidelines for the working group. It is not a specific mandate about specific items that the working group should look in. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I insist in keeping other issues to facilitate the work of the committee, because this is the purpose of the working group, is to facilitate the work of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Palestine. So we have to finalize. Secretariat just reflected the concerns raised by Hungary and added the new sub-item 4. Philippines.
Thank you, Chair. We support Hungary's proposal and then also Palestine's proposal, which should be a new small 5. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, dear colleagues. With the addition of small 4 and 5, can I take it that our committee members decide to adopt this para as a whole? Seeing no objection, this para is adopted as proposed. Thank you. Para 9 is adopted. We will get back to para 7. So para 9 is adopted. So I think para 7 also the concerns addressed by delegation of Philippines is now cleared. Can I understand correctly? Yes, okay, thank you. Para 7 as amended, no objection, is adopted. Yeah, we already deleted that the para of Philippines. No, Philippines.
No, Mr. Chairman, it was the different understanding. It was our paragraph as amended by Algeria that we understood would be adopted, not the original Turkish, Austrian, and Ethiopian amendment. That was our understanding, Mr. Chairperson. And
that's the understanding of this committee. That was the original proposal, and So para 7 is now replaced by proposal put forward by Philippines. Decide to resume. It's adopted. Para 7 is adopted. Can I take it that the committee has decided to adopt the draft decision 12.com/13 as a whole as amended? Seeing no objection, the draft decision is adopted. Thank you. Dear colleagues, we have to proceed to item 12, procedures to facilitate the dialogue between EB and the submitting states. I'd like to suspend this item until afternoon meeting. No, until next session meeting. Is it agreeable? Palestine.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have no problem to suspend it till the next. This was the understanding out of the discussions, so no problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So seeing no objections, it's so decided to push back until next session meeting, item 12. Thank you. Secretariat, you have something to announce?
Sorry, I very briefly wanted to respond to the comments made, and in particular some issues addressed by the delegation of Philippines in the beginning, and to indeed confirm that the Secretariat is not against the dialogue. And I need to make that clear, but we wouldn't want the broader concept of dialogue to be limited to one specific mechanism that is being proposed. So there is dialogue in the sense of dialogue as understood and the broader mechanism. I reiterate again that we are unable and we will not be providing Secretariat services to the informal working group. However, of course, should we be invited to attend, we would be happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tinkotis. Ladies and gentlemen, in conformity with Article 30 of the Convention, the committee is to submit a report of its activities to the General Assembly at each of its sessions. Furthermore, according to Rule 43 of our Rules of Procedure, we shall adopt our report of this session in the form of a list of decisions. We will therefore proceed with items 5A and 22 concerning the report of the committee and the approval of the list of decisions immediately after lunch break. The report of the committee to the General Assembly will need to be updated to include activities the committee have undertaken between the time of the writing of the report in October and the end of the year 2017. To facilitate this process during the lunch break, the Secretariat will update the report of the committee to the General Assembly with your accomplishment till now. Moreover, the Secretariat will compile the decisions adopted during this week and up to the lunch break today, that is, decisions concerning items 2 to 11, including 11A, 11B, 11C, 11D, and 11E, as well as 14, 17, 18, 19, and 20. The committee members will find a printed copy upon their return in this room at 2 p.m. This will give you half an hour to read the report and the decisions. We would then start with item 5A at 2:30 p.m. to adopt our report. We may ask the committee to allow the rapporteur of the 12th session to validate any necessary updates to the report. Immediately after that, we can move to item 22 to adopt the list of decisions. Once more, the committee may allow the rapporteur to validate any remaining decisions. Please, ladies and gentlemen, before you leave the room, I'd like to remind you that at 2 p.m. today, as I said earlier, committee members will find on their tables a printed copy of the updated report by the committee to the General Assembly on its activities and the list of decisions taken until the morning session. You will have half an hour to read these documents. We will then resume the meeting at 2:30 p.m. to finalize the examination of items. As I already announced, the 5A report by the committee to GA on its activities, and the 22 adoption of the list of decisions. I will now give the floor to the Secretary of Convention to make some practical announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Just to inform you that the Secretariat will shortly send a satisfaction survey to your emails. We would greatly appreciate if you can complete it in a timely manner. This helps us to improve the organization of statutory meetings of the Convention. The survey is available on the webpage of the 12Com. Please see the link displayed on the screen. I believe it's on the screen. Indeed, most of the recordings of the meeting are already available online on the page of the 12Com. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. As mentioned, printed copies will be on your tables at 2 p.m. and we will start the afternoon meeting at 2:30 p.m. Please make sure you are on time. That being said, the meeting is adjourned.